Hello, good evening and welcome to the United Stand. We've got an absolutely packed show tonight. There is so much to talk about. Mourinho potentially on the edge. Bailly and Martial potentially going to Premier League rivals. Pogba, the hint that he will leave at the end of the season. Rashford and Martial while they're failing. But first of all, we've got some big breaking news. John Terry will not be joining Spartak Moscow. He said, and this is what he said, well, potentially what he said actually, that he doesn't want to spend any more rainy nights in Moscow crying on his arse. So that's why he's not going to Spartak Moscow. That's what I think anyway. But seriously, let's talk about Jose Mourinho, because I think that there is a look. Well, Mourinho in, Mourinho out, shake it all about, who cares? The reality is, I think something that has been missing from Manchester United probably over the last couple of weeks, even from our channel, we haven't spoken about it much, is the mental sort of fatigue that Jose Mourinho is probably feeling. It's meant to be 2 weeks off for him, and I don't think it has been. He's fallen over a rope, and that's, if that's not challenging enough, he's had all the Pogba stuff, everything else. Claude Makélélé, who used to play with him under Chelsea, has said that Mourinho looks like he's worn out. That, when he was at Chelsea, he had Makélélé, Lampard and Terry, and they were the right sort of players for him. At United, he just keeps churning through players and he can't find it. And he said he's still a top manager and he can still do it, but he senses that there's a frustration that, it's not how it used to be, and he is looking a bit tired. And I mean, that's for Makélélé to say. But also I think it's very important that us as Manchester United fans realise that Mourinho doesn't have an easy job. And some would say, well, tough. It's Manchester United, it's the toughest job in the world. But I do think that Mourinho is constantly presented with challenges that, just when things are looking good, he's thrown another problem. I mean, Burnley, yeah, it was only Burnley, but there was a lot to be positive about. We're looking forward to Watford at the weekend. And throughout this international break, we've had Martial's apparently doesn't want to sign a new contract anymore. Pogba slagging him off twice. Rashford's got to leave, which we were talking about at lunchtime. So, and it's there's never a day off with Manchester United anyway. The press won't let that happen with the biggest club in the world. But there genuinely is never a day off with Manchester United anyway. There's always problems. I mean, you think about Jurgen Klopp, you think about Pep Guardiola, you think about Pochettino and Sarri, 4 managers of 4 clubs that are probably going to be fighting for the title. Can you think of any story for them over the international break? Anything, Salah talking about he wants to leave, Sane moaning he's not getting enough game time. No, and part of that's because the press aren't really interested in them clubs, with all due respect. They're obsessed with Manchester United. But part of that is because them clubs are not in upheaval. They're in a good situation. They're either championship winners or they're going for that, and there's positivity, and the managers have backed the clubs, the fans are behind the manager. And that's the problem with United at the moment. There's a lot going on, and I think that, look, we need Jose Mourinho to win football matches for Manchester United, especially against Watford and Wolves. But I do think it's important that we realise that this is a guy who doesn't live with his family. He lives in a hotel in Manchester. It's a very nice hotel. It's not a travel lodge. I'm sure he gets free porn, whatever. He gets absolutely everything he wants. And whilst I'm joking there, he does live. It is a nice hotel. It's not a travel lodge, but he is away from his family. It is a very, it's a job to Mourinho. I think this is the problem. I think this is the thing we've said so many times. It is a job. Where is the passion? We've seen a bit of passion over the last couple of weeks, but where does that passion go when he goes back to his hotel 5 nights a week? Is he isolated? Is he feeling the pressure? And is he, in a way, is he being bullied? Bullying is something that, seems to be a hot topic at the moment around a lot of things. But is Mourinho subliminally or technically being bullied at Manchester United? The board's not backing him. Pogba knows he's in a very strong position. I suppose bullying is probably a strong word, but certainly in positions of power where they know that they can drop stuff out. I don't know. But I do sympathise with Mourinho. I think he's got a very, very difficult job. And the last thing we want, whether you want him in or out of the club, I think it's very important to realise that he is under a lot of pressure, and every little thing that goes on doesn't help that. And he is just a man. He is just a man. And the quote from Herrera always stands out to me, though, that Mourinho, he said, I've never met anybody like him. He just doesn't care what other people think about him. He's just an island. And hopefully he can stay like that, because he's going to need a lot of strength over the next couple of weeks, and hopefully a lot of support. To keep the support, he's got to get the results. And Watford's a massive game at the weekend. And as we know, with United, international breaks away from home after an international break, it's always very, very difficult. I remember last season, was it Stoke City we had straight after the international break, and we drew it 1-1. Watford are flying much higher than Stoke, so it's going to be tough. It's because Jose doesn't fit the United way. He fits flip-flop clubs like Chelsea, says Bio20. Thanks for that contribution, mate. And why does Jose get 1,000 chances? Get the fuck out, says Marco. Well, very, 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 very frank from him there. You can't argue with that. Well, you can argue with it, but you can't argue with somebody who just comes out and has their opinion, which I never will. But I think there won't be many more chances after this one. I think even hardened Mourinho supporters know that we've got to get it right this time. I must just say, Schmeichel's come out and said we can win the title. Now, Peter Schmeichel was on the United stand last week talking to Flex. In my ignorance, I hadn't realised something. He's been speaking again with Dennis Irwin in America because he's a Manchester United ambassador. So actually, when you've got Cantona coming out and saying, I'd rather have Pep Guardiola as Manchester United manager, and you've got another Manchester United legend, Schmeichel, saying I'd rather keep Mourinho, of course Peter Schmeichel's going to say that. He's an ambassador of the club. They pay him to do stuff. He's not going to come out and say Mourinho out. Not that I don't believe that he backs Mourinho anyway, but I just wanted to clarify that from last week because I think it's quite important to just say, you know, Schmeichel is an ambassador for the club, so he's probably going to back him if you know what I mean. Let's talk about. There's two big topics I want to discuss here and want to get your thoughts on it. Martial out, says Horse Sense. You've prompted me into it. Dagiles says, why is Martial not starting? Well, there's a talk that Jose Mourinho favours Rashford because he's lost patience with Martial. There's also a talk that Martial doesn't want to sign a new contract while Mourinho is here. But because it's been an international break, you let your brain wander a little bit more than you can do when there's a game every couple of days. You're reacting, then you're previewing. It's going to be very fast-paced over the next 4 weeks with so many games. The international break, the one thing it is good for, and I'm tempted to say it's not good for anything, but it is good for, is you can look at things and you can analyse them a little bit more. So I've been thinking today, this afternoon specifically, licking my wounds after my terrible FIFA stream, that Rashford and Martial, 3 years to the day since Anthony Martial made his debut and destroyed Martin Skrtel. Where is he? I've not seen him since that day against Old Trafford where he was put on his arse. But Martial did that and we were like, what a player. And for the rest of that season, he was fantastic. And we've seen glimpses since then that basically under Mourinho, Martial has regressed. And Rashford, I would say the same as I said at lunchtime, has not developed. Why is that? I saw a tweet, and I don't know whether Rooney said it, but I saw a tweet fleetingly this afternoon and it got me thinking. It was something about playing with fear, playing without fear, or being scared to make mistakes. And I think that's very, very true. I think that is true. I think Mourinho is a perfectionist. He's an obsessive. He's very well organised, and he wants players to not make mistakes because I've read quotes about Mourinho that he actually prefers in some ways not to have the ball because if you've got the ball you can make mistakes, and if you haven't got the ball you can exploit those mistakes. But that's probably, you know, speculative to say all that nonsense. But what I would say is that I think in relation to Martial especially and Marcus Rashford, when they burst on the scene, and a lot of people can say a lot of bad things about Van Gaal. He's an idiot. He falls on the floor. He was an overactor. He was past it. But, you know, nobody is completely bad. Even Darth Vader came back. I'd probably say Hitler was probably totally all bad and some people through history. But we're talking about football here. We're not going to digress. And, yeah, Van Gaal was a bad manager, but he wasn't totally bad. And what I feel from Van Gaal is that with Martial and Rashford, when they burst on the scene under Van Gaal, they were both fantastic. Rashford towards the end of the season, Martial throughout that final season of Van Gaal. They were both fantastic. And they both played without fear. And Wayne Rooney played without fear as a kid. And Michael Owen played without fear as a kid. And Marcus Rashford and Martial, when we were talking about who's the better out of these two, we've got two of the... And I remember saying this sentence, and it's going to sound stupid now, that I've said this a couple of years ago. We've got the two best young players in the Premier League with Rashford and Martial. It sounds like a stupid idiot comment now, but at the time, nobody would have argued with it. Now, 2 years later, they're still only 20 and 22. They're not the two best young players in the Premier League. But they were 2 years ago because they were playing without fear. Because Van Gaal said, go out there, don't be scared and do your thing. And they did their thing. I think under Mourinho, and it is a criticism, but it isn't. It's more an understanding of where it's gone wrong. Mourinho is not somebody who with youth goes, go on, just run free, play around the field, get dirty, you know, I'm not bothered. He's not like that. He's a driven manager. He's focused on the finite detail. And I think that what's happened with Rashford and Martial is they're not trusted because they're not the finished article yet, and that's fine. You know, I saw a quote today that Mourinho doesn't trust Rashford. Well done. I'd agree with that. Rashford's not the finished article, so you can't trust him. But what you've got to do is you've got to give him the freedom to develop, and that's what maybe a Van Gaal and Sir Alex did. Mourinho's never been that sort of manager. I said that when we first got him. Mourinho's not a manager to go and develop players in a pressure cooker environment of Manchester United, where it's about results. So I think what's happened with Rashford and Martial is that they played without fear, and under Mourinho they play with fear because they're scared of making mistakes, and that doesn't help anybody. So that's my theory. I don't know what people think about that. Ain't Nottinance says Mourinho needs yes man. He kills creative minds and needs robots. I think he needs the finished article is probably a fairer comment. Jose wants to win, says Horse Sense. Exactly. And whilst what I am doing here is trying to justify Martial and Rashford's regression against progression, whilst being fair to Mourinho and saying Mourinho should never, ever really... He can be criticised because those players have not developed. But is it really his fault when he's never been that sort of manager? It shouldn't be a surprise. Everything about Manchester United hurts badly. I'm hurting seeing us fall like this, says Sully BJ. But we're not falling yet, mate. We're not falling yet. Jose needs to find his first 11 players and start a run of games, Mark, says Maurice Jones. I've agreed with that for a long time. Louis van Gaal understood young players, says Tyrone Williams. I think he did. I mean, he played Fosu Mensah and Twansibi, didn't he, as well? And they've hardly played under Mourinho. And that was, you know, Van Gaal was here nearly 2.5 years ago now. And he was playing Twansibi and Fosu Mensah and Rashford, you know, and they've hardly played ever since. So, you know, Van Gaal, you've got to be fair, he did understand youth. But I know, you know, Van Gaal being sacked was 100% the right decision. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm just saying Van Gaal had one good thing about him, and that was his trust and development of youth players. Mourinho's got far more positives than Van Gaal, and I'd much rather have Mourinho, but Mourinho doesn't have that youth thing that Van Gaal did. Fear is a very good motivator for effort, not for expressing yourself, says Paul Robinson. I disagree, Paul. I think what you're talking about there is something that I would agree with in some ways, but I don't think it helps certain personalities. You know, fear can be a good motivator. Of course it can. I mean, when I used to go and play football, I'd be very nervous. And until I got that first tackle in, the adrenaline would go. Nerves can be used in a very, very positive way. But I think with youth players, if you are scared of making a mistake, are you really going to express yourself? And I certainly think it's applicable to people like Martial, who, you know, they're scared to make mistakes. So yeah, I do stand by that, but I do agree with what you're saying in a more general sense with certain personalities. I'd prefer LVG than Mourinho, says Dakri. It's a bit like saying you'd prefer an Escort over a Ferrari, but, you know, each to their own. And William Scott couldn't give a shit about pronunciations, never have. Football has changed. Jose needs to change or risk being obsolete, says Frederic Feal. And Lukaku is not a finished article, Mark, says Vabif Mangani. Yeah, but Lukaku, I don't think Lukaku is any difference to what he was at Everton. I haven't seen any development of Lukaku, but Lukaku came to Manchester United as a Premier League striker who consistently scored for the last 4 years at Everton and West Brom a lot of goals, and at United he's continued that. I don't see a development in Lukaku's game. I think Lukaku is the perfect Mourinho signing. He wants somebody out the box to drop into his box who just goes. He doesn't really want to be changing too much about them. He wants ready to go. Sanchez ready to go, Matic ready to go. That's the sort of player that Mourinho's traditionally gone for. They don't have to be touching 30. They could be like 24, like Lukaku. But he wants the finished article because then it's, you know, they're winners then in his mind. LVG's football was crap, but his man management was better than Jose's, although not by much, says Zotti. Look, Van Gaal, you know, let's not have a Van Gaal loving. I mean, youth, yes, but he did outplay us in public, and I didn't like that. Anyway, want to whiz through some of the topics. 3 years then Spain. This was in the Mirror from Mino Raiola. Now, when we signed Paul Pogba, I did mention it in one of the videos that my concern about Pogba was I always felt that he wanted to go to Barcelona or Madrid, and we got him. And I always felt that Pogba wouldn't be here for 10 years. I always felt that it was a stepping stone to Spain. I think I expressed it as a concern at the time. And this quote goes back to then, that the Mirror are talking about with Mino Raiola. So if that's true, 3 years, then Spain, which was said 3 years ago, then that would mean this is year 3 for Pogba and he's off, which a lot of people fear anyway. I mean, I don't want to dwell on that one too much, but what I'm saying is it wouldn't surprise me if Paul Pogba leaves Manchester United any time in the next 2 years, because I think that was probably always the journey of brand Pogba. I don't think brand Pogba is meant to be at United for 10 years. I do not think that. I think Pogba started at United, went to Italy, won titles. I think he thought he was going to come to United and win titles. It's not quite gone that way. But I think at some point he'll be looking at Spain. And then, he's been, Pogba looks like the sort of guy who enjoys getting out a bit, seeing the world and seeing different things and experiencing it. I don't think he's going to be at Manchester United when he's 30. I'd like to think that he's going to kick on and become this great consistent player, and I hope that he does, but I think if he does, we'll only get 1 or 2 years of it. I really don't think Pogba's going to be here. 2020, I don't think Paul Pogba will be a Manchester United player, let's put it that way. But I don't know what you lot think, and that's not about saying Paul Pogba's a shit, or I don't like Pogba. I do like Pogba, but I mean, I tweeted something out today, and I stand by it. I said controversial opinion, but Di Maria actually did more in a Manchester United shirt than Paul Pogba. It's close, but when you think about it, people just, and I know the snakes are going to appear, but Di Maria, although he was only here for a year, Di Maria was only here for a year. He did do some really good things. I remember that goal against Leicester. He did have, he had about 5 or 6 really good games, and then it sort of drifted off a bit. But I can't think of 5 or 6 good games. Pogba's played more games, but he's played a hell of a lot of average games. I want to see the real Paul Pogba stepping up for Manchester United, and I can't wait for Saturday. Because I think Pogba can do it, and I think Mourinho can do it, and we as fans expect and wait to see it happen. Pogba is not world class, he is decoration, says Marco. He's on form tonight, and Sir Alex Ferguson was right about Pogba, says Andreas. And Pogba is the same as Zlatan, globe-trotting around the world whilst Raiola gets as many fat checks as he can get on his hands. George Kyle, that's probably comment of the night so far, to be honest, because you're probably right about that. I mean, Zlatan was Mino Raiola's star player before he retired and Pogba came onto the scene. And how many clubs did Zlatan have? I mean, definitely, Barcelona. Was he not at Inter Milan and AC Milan? PSG as well. Juventus, was he at Juventus as well? I mean, I don't know. I don't know how many clubs Zlatan had, but certainly you can see echoes of that with Raiola, with his star. I mean, look at these clubs. Here it is. He was at Ajax, then Juventus, then Inter Milan, then Barcelona, then Milan, then PSG, then Manchester United, and now LA Galaxy. All in the space of about 10 years. So he did move around every couple of years, to be fair. So year 3 for Pogba. I don't think we should be surprised about that if it happens. There was some talk as well. I just wanted to, some positive news. Luke Shaw could well play against Watford on Saturday. Concussion is not about fitness. It's about a head injury, and it's about protocol, and it's normally about 7 days of no ill effects from the head collision. So the rumour is that Luke Shaw's fine. There's not been any ill effects. And Saturday is obviously day 7. So realistically, Luke Shaw could well play. I suspect United might just take the safer ground and just not play him. But, if he's not had any ill effects, it is day 7. I think just play him. Just play him. Don't risk Ashley Young nicking your place. I would play him. So I hope Luke Shaw does play. Obviously, only if everything's okay with him physically and mentally in relation to his head injury, but that would be a positive. What else? Yes. I saw something today about Martial and Arsenal, whatever. But I also saw something about Eric Bailly in Chelsea, which I said this last night, didn't I? Or maybe I was talking to somebody about it, about Eric Bailly. Eric Bailly's situation is a bit of a weird one. It really is. I don't really understand what's going on with Eric Bailly. I don't think there's much chance of Eric Bailly starting at the weekend. But you've got to wonder why Eric Bailly is not in our first team. I mean, to me, there are currently 3/4 players that should be in our first team that probably aren't going to be in our first team anytime soon. Eric Bailly, Anthony Martial, Pereira, and Rashford to a certain extent. I nearly said Fred, but I hope Fred's going to start getting some games. I think Fred definitely should play against Watford because he's energetic. But yeah, I don't know what's going on with Eric Bailly. It's a bit of a funny one, if I'm honest. But hopefully we'll start to see a little bit more of Eric Bailly, because I still think he's head and shoulders our best centre back. This is Tierney says, do you think Zidane can get top 4 in Champions League final? He's got to find a club first, and I don't think it would be United. I mean, look, the thing about Zidane is, as I understand it with Zidane, he doesn't speak English, and I just think he's nailed on to be Juventus' next manager. He loves Juventus. He played for Juventus. Allegri's been there for many years now, and I think Allegri's probably looking at a move himself. So, I mean, if Allegri was to win the Champions League with Ronaldo, he may as well go because he's won everything. If he doesn't win the Champions League, maybe they get rid of him because he's won league titles, but he can't win the Champions League. So I think Allegri's gone at the end of the season, and then I think Juventus becomes Zidane. I really do think that's what's going to be on the cards. So there's a very, very true thing that a lot of people are saying at the moment. I don't want Mourinho gone because there's nobody to come in at the moment. And that is probably very, very true, because I don't see who comes into the Manchester United job at the moment. Mourinho probably is the best person for the job. Raj, but maybe not on Saturday night. Raj Dolkai says, if I had to choose between Pogba and Jose, I would choose Jose simply because I don't think Pogba can win as a title on his own, whereas Jose surely can. And that would feed in with what, I mean, thanks for the contribution, mate, but that would feed into something as well. I mean, why would you pick Pogba over Mourinho anyway? We don't know the true story. So basically we are being asked to pick a player ahead of the manager. And on top of that, if Mourinho is kicked out of the club for Pogba, I still think Pogba will be looking to go to Spain in the next couple of years. So we side with Pogba, and then he'll go in a couple of years anyway. So I think you've got it. The most important thing to get behind is the club. It's a very exciting time. The international break seems to have gone on for a year. It's gone. We are, 2.5 days away from the final, from the Watford game, which, as I keep saying, is a season-defining game. It is. It is. We've got... I don't even want to mention the D word, draw. A draw is such a dead result to us. And of course, I don't want to dismiss it because it could be that the referee's crap. He awards them 2 penalties. We get someone sent off. We're down to 10 men and we're 2-0 down with 10 minutes to go, and we fight back like heroes and get a 2-2 draw. You can't criticise a draw then. But before the game starts, we can say that a draw doesn't help us. 1 point... We can't afford 1 point at the moment. We need 3 points. That's what United need on Saturday. A loss obviously would just be catastrophic. A draw isn't good enough. We need to go and win on Saturday. And I'm massively excited about that challenge, and I hope United players are as well. Club comes first, not Pogba, says Mushni. We love you, Fellaini, we do, says the gifted one. Be interested to see if Fellaini's going to play tomorrow. I'm going to do my preview at about 1 o'clock tomorrow. I'm going to do my preview tomorrow. I've also got a video going up on my channel that I think is going to rock some shit. It's mean tweets, which is already been recorded, and even myself, I think it's quite a good one. So that's on my channel, Goldbridge live stream. That'll be going up at about 10 o'clock tomorrow. Liverpool versus Spurs is a big game, Gabriel, at the weekend. Yes, 12:30 kickoff. I'm looking forward to that. You know, to be honest with you, somebody's going to drop points there, aren't they? But that's going to happen anyway. It's only game week 5. We've got to start winning games. Wolves is going to be a good game as well. We've got to take 6 points from the next 2, and then you start to build again. But West Ham away, Newcastle at home, 12 points from this mini section before the next international break would be great. Matt Hodges, not going to answer that question, sorry, can't. Jose is a poison, stop ignoring the facts, guys, says Farouk. But Farouk, the thing is, if everyone just suddenly goes, King Farouk, we're going to agree with you, you're right about Mourinho, and then we win on Saturday night, then everyone's going to go, oh, you know. I think now is the time to be positive. There's going to be plenty of time to be negative if it all comes crashing down. Mourinho is sort of in that situation now, which I've mentioned so many times, where he's only ever 1 result away from meltdown, isn't he? Because of the negativity that's been built up over the 2 years that he's been here. So he's always 1 result away. But that's, for me, is the reason why we need to try and be positive. We've got to win. There's nothing to be gained from losing at the weekend. We've got to win that game. And it will be a challenge. It will be a challenge. Watford will be up for it. They're energetic, and that sometimes has been an issue, especially with people like Pogba. I mean, I do worry about Pogba. If he's going to go into that game lethargic like he was against Brighton, against people like Capoue and Decore, who will absolutely relish playing against Paul Pogba, World Cup winner, then that puts us down to 10 men straight away. So we've got to be up for it. We've got to be up for the fight. There can't be any fatigue, and it's going to be very, very difficult. It's a very difficult game, and I think for me that's why I'm excited. We will be doing watch-alongs. We will have fan cams. Yes, that's that. Back Jose, says Badshah. Louis says Jose in. Andrew Ellis always sticks with his opinion. Hats off, says Pankaj. From day one, Andrew Ellis has never wanted Jose Mourinho, so you've got to respect that. He has been very, very consistent with it. We might win Saturday game and lose the 2 games after, says Marcus. Exactly, and that's what I'm saying. You can only go with what's happening in front of you, and I think at the moment we just need to be positive and focus on the positive, because it could be short-lived. It might only last 3 days, and I'm nervous about the game. I'm nervous about the game. Yuppie's back. Back the manager, says the normal gamer. The board is one half of the problem, says Lee Newman. Oh, mate, there's so much. There's so much. You're not wrong. There's so much we don't know. We absolutely don't know what's going on at United. A lot of people are trying to find out and they just can't. Zed Jamie says it's obvious Fellaini will start against Watford. Wasn't part of the Belgian squad, pulled out, but wanted to spend a couple of weeks camping with Mourinho in the Lake District. But I'm sure he's fit and ready to go now. In many ways, Fellaini probably does deserve to start against Watford, but I just worry about his lack of mobility. But, you know, Mourinho will find a way, I'm sure. Rishab Sina says, I will always back the club to win, but one can't ignore Jose and Pogba. They are poison. I agree with Rishab. I think the situation is not good, and it's embarrassing, but they need to put it behind them because we've got to win on Saturday. And Bjorn Lundberg, no Zidane, but Giggs is a great alternative because if we change manager again, we must build slowly. And Giggs is the only person who, with enough goodwill with the fans, and he will get time. You say that though, Bjorn, and I've got to be honest with you. I was up in Manchester a couple of weeks ago talking to some like really old school Manchester United fans, and you know, some of them, like you say, were really, you know, positive about Giggs, but one of them actually said, I don't want that lad anywhere near our club. And, you know, so it's not always, oh, legend, this, that and the other. People make their own mind up. And I think Giggs, look, I'd obviously be very excited about the class of 92 and somebody who understands the club being in charge. But as somebody just said there, if the problem, half the problem is the board, then that becomes half the problem, doesn't it? Anyway, I've got somewhere to be. I can't tell you where at the moment because it might not happen, but I'm meant to be off to do it at 8:30. So otherwise, I'd go on a little bit longer. Tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, I am going to do an hour with you. I want to probably get some Skype calls, but definitely interacting with the live comments. 1 o'clock tomorrow is the preview. 8 o'clock tomorrow night, we'll have a bit of a, you know, what we do on here, the community interaction and all that lot. And then Friday, press conference with Mourinho. And then Saturday, it's game time. Yabba dabba doo. It's all coming together lovely. Exactly how I planned. Anyway, have a good evening, everybody. Thanks for watching. Smash the like button. It's great. I feel, even though we've not been anywhere, I feel like we're back. I feel like we're back because the optimism is now real. We're getting really close to United playing. Got so many games to come forward. And games are what it's all about, isn't it? It's all about the games. That gives you the stories. That gives you the passion. That gives you the reaction for a few days. You get to digest what players are doing, the tactics. Lovely jubbly, as Del Boy would say. So bring it all on. And enjoyed the chat. We got through a lot in half an hour. Drop a like on video and I'll speak to you tomorrow night. A few of you actually, just to be first callers tomorrow night, check your Skype. I wouldn't mind getting like maybe Paul Robinson or someone on first tomorrow. Just we're bound to get some of the bloody idiots to come on. But if we start off with a couple of people that we know, at least they don't get their glory at the start of the video. So keep an eye out on your Skype messages or drop me a DM on Twitter. Thanks for watching, everybody. I shall see you tomorrow, 1 o'clock for the preview. Then 8 o'clock, we're going to give it a go with a bit of interactivity, which is what the channel's always going to be about. See you all soon.